I truly believe that 95% of the problems are system problems, are not people problems. What that means, it's not about the people. If you take a person out and you put another person, the problem will be the same, because I'm pretty sure the behavior of the person is dictated by the system. That's what I told you in the beginning. I truly believe culture is dictated by the structure that you have around. If you have a culture that you will, or a structure that will reward you to defend your silo, you will defend your silo. If you have a structure that pushes you to defend the whole, you will defend the whole. So it's not about people, it's about the system, how the system is created. So I wanted to tell you a story. On the 80s, there was a company, manufacturing company in US, that basically they had it was one of the worst factories in the entire US. 20% of the people did not show up, and consumption of alcohol, drugs was very, very, very high. What happened? So General Motors and Toyota, they acquire that company, okay? And 85%, guys, it's not 5-10, it's 85% of the initial workforce was completely rehired. You know, they gave Toyota production system to them, they sent people to US, they sent people to Japan, and 1 year later, it became one of the best companies in the entire US. Okay, so it went from the worst, or one of the worst, to one of the best, with the 85% of the same workforce. Okay, what they did, they changed the system, they changed the process, they changed the way how people were working. Okay, so that's why I really believe that system is a secret. So that's why I really believe that we should start doing retrospectives, how the organization works, not only on the team level, but how the organization works, how the process are going, and really looking to the system, to the process, how the way organization works. And then what the heck do we do with those impediments? We create an organization impediment board or improvement board. Some companies don't like the word impediment, they like the word improvement. So improvement. But basically what we have is a Kanban. This is a very simple Kanban board. There's nothing more than that collects the entire organizational impediments and puts it on the board. With the difference is, and it becomes like a backlog of problems. The big difference is you bring to this board, you bring the executives to the Scrum Masters, and this brings a very interesting coalition between the operating part and the executive part. And this allows, as some of you said in the beginning of the presentation, this allows the executives to have a much better, clear understanding of the problems that's going on in the organization, because most of the times the middle management is filtering the whole entire problem, right? So, and with me, this is a tool that every time I engage in the contract nowadays, it's part of the contract that I define that we need to have an organizational impediment board. And actually, for us as a consulting company, it's even more important. So we use this as a backlog of our implementation. So we use this Kanban board as our own backlog of transformation, okay? And what happens is we have exactly like a product owner, which usually is like a C-suite guy. And we have the middle managers and everyone on the operation levels. And you cannot imagine the how powerful this tool is, because middle managers most of the time try to hide a lot of information, because information is power. As soon as you start to bring a board like this into the game, and you bring the Scrum Masters feeding this board, and the middle managers, the good guys feeding, and the big ones feeding, it creates so much transparency that's very hard for anyone to sabotage any kind of initiative. It's very hard to anyone to really not allow change to happen, okay? So this is something that we always did. In Metroid, Michael, it was not so successful, even if I think we had some success there. It was not that great, but this is something that I'm not, yeah, every time I go to a consulting gig nowadays, this is a mandatory tool. Okay.
We didn't have it in the contract at that time. I think that was
no.
I have one question to this. So you say the Scrum Masters are feeding this board.
Yes.
So just if I imagine maybe I have a facility with 1,000 developers, a big facility of a big company. So wouldn't this really fill up very quickly, or?
Let's give me 20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I will. I will answer that one.
Okay. Thanks.
So, but the interesting part is it's not just a post-it, right? We try to write it with hypothesis format. So basically, we hypothesize is by implementing this change, we will solve this problem that which will have these benefits as measured by this measurement. Okay, so we try to create a learning experiment, learning culture, experiment culture, so that we just don't put stuff there. Okay, so basically we hypothesize by creating an organization impediment improvement board, we'll create transparency, which will allow us to identify possible improvements measured by the amount of opportunities solved per month. Okay, something very simple, but you could put whatever. I remember in Metro with Michael, consultants did not have permission to print. So basically we started to make a calculation. It was like a 2,000 engineer organization. So we started to make a calculation. It was crazy, like 50, 60K per month that they were losing just for people that the consultants that were interrupting the people to print out and whatever. So it was a huge nightmare. So you can just play around with this kind of stuff. In Metro, in holiday check, I remember at that time, it was very difficult. How I think it's even worse, was very difficult to recruit people. So we create a meetup to help with the recruitment process, right? So we create a hypothesis that basically by creating a meetup, we will help to recruit. And basically we were able to save like in 6 months, 150,000 euros in recruitment fees with that meetup. So you can come up with a lot of ideas. And just to add to the question, so the Scrum Masters bring topics, but be careful. It's just the topics that cannot be solved by the teams. Okay, it's not all the topics that it's not all the topics that appear. The topics that cannot be solved by the team. Okay, and still it's a lot of topics. So I will explain how we do it. I like this phrase from Jürgen. As a manager, we don't, or we shouldn't manage the people, should manage the system. And it's a bit what we are trying to do here, right? We are trying to look at the process. We are trying to look the way how things work to improve the things and to make it better. The fourth pillar that I really believe, it's how we share knowledge within the organization. And for that, I basically love to when I join a consulting gig, I always try and teach system thinking, because a lot of people don't understand or don't even know what system thinking is. So we really try to provide some training on that one, and for to illustrate how system thinking is very important, I will tell you one story. So when I was writing my first book, the retrospectives, I met a Swedish guy, and on the end of the 90s, he was working in the manufacturing, in the software development company. And basically they were doing software for companies. So they were software provider. They were doing projects for companies that needed software. And because they had really crappy quality, software quality, they started to think, okay, let's do XP, so that we can try to improve the quality of our software. So they implemented XP, and the results were completely, wow, they blew up everyone, right? So no bugs. I mean, the quality went really up. Customer satisfaction went really up. Surprise, at the end of the year, when the financial results came, they started to lose much more money than the previous years. And they started to analyze why. And the reason why was when they were budgeting projects, they were counting already with bug fixes and charging bug fixes. So after the moment the quality went up, they started not to charge anything. So they were not getting any money out of it. So there's a overall, the company got screwed, right? And I'm telling this story, why? Because just because we improve a small piece of the system, a small piece of the company, doesn't mean the overall company will be improved, right? So this is just a story to illustrate how difficult it is Another story, very simple. When I was working in Avira in Friedrichshafen, it was very interesting because we had too many developers and too little testers. So basically, there was always a queue waiting, right? So there was a bottleneck on the QA part. So instead of these guys, at some point, instead of them helping the developers, helping the QA to kind of reduce the bottleneck and increase the flow, what did they do? They started to pick up more stuff from the backlog because they were empty-handed. So, okay, we don't have anything, so we will bring more stories. What happened? The velocity crashed even more because the QA, they got so much stressed and that they could not do anything. The stories from the developer point of view, yes, they were doing more stories, but the overall system crashed completely because the pressure on the QA was becoming much higher and they could not deliver, and the company and the team as a whole crashed. So just small examples that I love to give so that basic examples people to understand that improving parts of the system does not really, most probably not result on the overall performance of the system. Experimentation training, this I love. It's always a discussion that I have with managers. They still think with these bonus and these rewards. I have very personal opinion about this. I think that they destroy a lot. So a lot of training that we should provide. And for me, the most important thing is starting communities of practice. This is community of practice, something so powerful that very few companies actually do. You can use, for example, book club every 2 weeks, a team. You can read a book and you share, but more important, share, but then bring some experience and select what you want to improve and what you want to implement on the team. Imagine that you have a team and then you have a book on continuous delivery or whatever. Everyone is going and read a chapter and say, I really love this one and we should start doing this. And every 2 weeks you have different ideas from everyone to bring and to integrate that on the daily job. It's super, super interesting. Lunch talks. So in holiday check was very interesting. So there was one guy that he built the whole continuous delivery pipeline at that time. So he did a lunch talk for the entire company with pizza and Coke and so on, so on. The talk was so interesting that basically at one day they record the entire talk and they started to use that talk as an onboarding talk for every engineer that joined the company. And then they start to see, oh, maybe this is interesting. Maybe we could do some kind of internal university or whatever. So they started to push a lot of these talks where people were recorded, and then they were kind of internal YouTube, whatever you want to call it, but very different tutorials. Okay, so it was a very interesting way of sharing knowledge. Coaching, coding dojos, open spaces, and the last piece, make sure that the innovation is part of your process. Why I put it, or why I think this is very important, because for several years I've been talking, I have several friends, they are innovation consultants, they are called to Lufthansa and SAP, and they go there and they do beautiful design thinking workshops and beautiful Google Sprints workshops. But the interesting part is that then nothing is implemented. Why? Because most of the companies, like we said in the beginning, they are backlog slaves. So they can do all the beautiful innovation, but at the end, they don't have any space whatsoever to innovate anything. So if you don't make the innovation part of your process, it's very hard to actually be able to do anything. So I recommend design thinking. One of the methodologies that I love is Google Sprint, or any other innovation methodology. And before I go to the next piece, by getting the design sprint and the Google Sprint at the end of your quarter, it's very cool because you are, and that's what we are using even now in Paribas. You can even use it as a product discovery. So you do it at the end, you can do innovation, you can do hackathon, you can do whatever, but by doing that and being 1 week validating ideas, you can already be doing product discovery with real customers. And because it's at the end, you create the OKRs, and immediately you can pursue OKRs and pursue features or ideas that your customers already validated on the product discovery on the Google Sprint. Okay, so when you put everything together, I talk like for almost 1 hour. So now you have a big picture. So it's something very basic, but you have the company, you have the strategy feeding the strategic goals. The strategic goals are startups or products, as you want to call it. You have some portfolio kanban board with everything what's going on. From here, you have this alignment that I said in the beginning, where you break the OKRs into deliveries. You have the quarter retrospective on the OKR point of view. You have the innovation week that I told you. You have the community of practices, and you have the organizational impediments. To come back to the question where we were saying, we have a 2000 engineer, we will pretty much put a Kanban board completely full of them. So the way how I do it, it's very simple. We usually run this circle. This is a high level, but we try to run it, the same idea for each product or each startup inside of the company. So for example, in Metro, we were breaking that company 2000 people in 12 startups. So every startup had different products. So what we did was we did an organizational impediment board for each product or each startup. So basically it's a cluster of 120 people. And basically we ran it for this whole circle. We run it individual for a startup so that we can basically it doesn't grow crazily like you were suggesting. Because, and this is my personal opinion, a lot of people talks about scaling. In my opinion, the secret is not scaling. My opinion, the secret is actually this scaling. So what we need to do is we need to pick up these enterprises, we identify the products of these enterprises, create the startups and breaking them. The way how we grow, basically it's creating the next startup next to it. Okay, so a very personal example of my company. So we have Evolution for All, my company, and we do the adapt, like I showed in the beginning. The adapt has the 5 pillars. So a lot of people is telling me, how are you going to grow? How are you going to grow? Very simple. The way how we are doing it, Evolution will be just a placeholder, and every pillar will be a company. Okay, and every time I want to do a new service or a new business unit, instead of increasing the complexity of the organization, I will open just a new company, but you can call it a business unit, whatever. I just want to call it a new company because I have a culture that everyone in Evolution that wants to have an idea and wants to spin off the company, we give a share of that new company. That's why we just spin off. So everyone is an entrepreneur if they want in our company. But yeah, pretty much this. So this is just a visionary, crazy thing. A lot of people believe that I do consulting because I do consulting, but in reality, the consulting is just my tool because I'm a visionary, crazy guy that wants to really create a better world. And I believe if we help organizations, especially leaders, they have so much power that we can create organization people love to work for. So 2 presents for you before we go. This is blah, blah, so it doesn't matter. So basically we do consulting, but a lot of leaders from small, medium companies said, Luis, we don't want to pay the consulting fee. Is there anything that you can offer for us to learn everything? So we created this digital leadership accelerator, but it's not for you. It's just was here on the slides, but this is for you. So if you want to, if you go here, organisationalmastery.com, there is a button to download the book completely for free. So if you are interested, you can just go there, download the book, and it's free. So everything just for you, no price, nothing. It's an offer. So thank you, and now questions. Thank you so much.